Hello, my name is Haley and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about all the books that I read in August. I read a total of 9 books, which is actually quite a lot for me. I read 3 romance, 2 nonfiction, 1 classic, 1 historical fiction, 1 play, and 1 children's book. The first book I read was The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I love Christina Lauren, but this one I felt really was not. I felt like this one was not my favorite. I felt like this one was really subpar compared to their other books. I liked the premise of it. I kind of liked the idea of the home renovation couple that is having issues, but like on the surface they're, you know, lovely and wonderful and couple goals. And I kind of like the trope of like people who work together falling in love. But I just felt like the execution wasn't there. It was a bit flat. The characters weren't super interesting, and I just don't think it lived up to past books by them. Overall, I liked it. It just wasn't my favorite, and I think compared to other Christina Laurens, it was not the greatest. The second book I read was The Guest House for Young Widows Among the Women of ISIS, and I'm gonna say this wrong, but it's written by Azadeh Moaveni. Sorry if I said that wrong. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was so well written and so interesting and intriguing. I think the subject matter is really important, and I think it's brave to write a book about ISIS from a more empathetic point of view, especially with women, because as the book kind of goes into, these women, a lot of them are kind of trapped in this ideology, and they kind of don't know what they're getting into when they go. I mean, a lot of women do, and there is a personal responsibility totally comes into play here, but just the nuances of the conversation I was really interested in, and I think that it was a very important topic to talk about. I really like the aspect where it talks a lot about the marginalization that women feel in their lives. So people that come from immigrant communities that live in London or Germany, and how easy it is to get marginalized in countries that you're not from, and how that affects how you view the world around you and the decisions you make. I felt that it was very complex, kind of a juxtaposition between like, oh, these women are trapped, people from ISIS abuse women, all this stuff, but then also these women are going of their own free will and they're making decisions on their own. So it's kind of this interesting like give and take of women that are being taken advantage of, but of women taking their life into their own hands. And I really liked how she dealt with that. And I was very interested in it, and I found it just completely heartbreaking and tragic. But I'm so glad that I read it. The third book I read was Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. This is the first book in the Hot and Hammered series, and I had already read the second book. I think it's Love Her or Leave Her. So I decided to pick up the first one also. This is a romance, and I gave it 3 stars. I think some of the issues that I had with this one were the same issues that I had with Love Her or Leave Her also, where it just felt like mostly the dialogue was very cheesy and not very genuine. For instance, like in this one, the hero calls her baby girl all the time, and it's supposed to be this like super like sexual, like seducing kind of thing. But then the hero in Love Her or Leave Her also called her baby girl. It's like, does everybody in this town call their significant others baby girl? It just felt odd, and I'm not a fan of that kind of banter anyway, so I really didn't like that aspect of it. I didn't like the aspect of her being a clown also because, again, it just didn't feel genuine. It just felt weird and forced, and I didn't really believe in that plot line. I really liked the hero, Travis's issue, where he used to be a Major League Baseball player, but he's not anymore because he got hurt, and how when he was kind of seen as this like womanizer, and how he can't quite break free from that label. I did like that aspect of it. I did think that was really interesting, and I kind of liked that he had that depth to him. But overall, I just didn't feel like it was genuine. I felt like the dialogue was a bit forced. I felt like some of the plot lines were a bit weird, and I did enjoy it. I just didn't enjoy it that much. The fourth book I read was Suddenly You by Lisa Kleypas. This was my first Lisa Kleypas, and I loved it. I gave it 4 stars, and I listened to it on audiobook through the Libby app. This is a romance, and I think it's a Regency romance, so it's a bit historical, but the characters were so well drawn out. They were so developed, and their storyline was just, I just loved it. The way that they bantered with each other, the way that they kind of grew with each other, I just thought it was great. It's about a woman who, she's kind of resigned herself to being a spinster. She's over 30, which is so funny now because I'm almost 30. She's over 30 and she's never been married, and she lives on her own in London, and she's a novelist, and that is what's most important to her, and she takes her independence very seriously. But for her 30th birthday, she decides that she wants to kind of not die a virgin, so she hires a prostitute to come to her house to kind of get down with her. And this guy shows up, and they're immediately drawn to each other, but then he leaves before they kind of finish the deed. And it turns out that he was the biggest publisher in London, and there was some kind of miscommunication, and he got sent there thinking that she was going to give him a manuscript. She thought he was a prostitute, so there was like this mix-up. And they kind of resist each other for a little bit, but then they can't help it, and then they enter into like a friends with benefits type situation while also being in business together. And then just kind of building and growing together. And I really loved it. It just made my heart ache. There was one part at the end kind of took me off guard, and it's not that I wish there was a trigger warning. It caught me off guard and it upset me. I know that I think it added a lot to the book, but just personally, it was a lot to handle. If you're thinking that you want to read it, maybe just look into any potential content or trigger warnings. The 5th book I read was America, the epic story of Spanish North America, 1493 to 1898 by Robert Goodwin. This had so much potential. It sounded so interesting. The cover was beautiful. I am into this kind of history. It should have been right up my alley. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I gave it 3 stars. I found it very dense, very wordy, and it very much had that kind of writing style where it was like tell, not show, which is kind of hard to put your finger on when it comes to nonfiction. But it very much read like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's just like, come on, give me more, I wanted more from it. I also felt like this subject matter is about the Spanish coming into the Caribbean, South, Central, and North America, kind of the empire they built, and it kind of ends with the British colonies and then eventually the United States kind of not kicking them out, but pushing them back out of North America. But so much of it had to do with the interactions between the Spanish and the natives, and I just really did not like the way that the natives were treated in this book. I know that the story is being told from the Spanish point of view, but it just felt like they were just kind of supporting actors on the sideline. Times that they were just delegated to being nothing more than just a tribe of, like uncivilized people. I just really didn't like it. I have had so many issues with the way Native Americans are treated in literature and in history in the American school system. It's just horrendous. So I just felt like for someone who was a scholar, for somebody who studied this is like his thing, there should have been more care given to the Native populations that were affected and decimated by the Spanish coming over. I also just felt like there should have been more context given to the timeline of events that happened. The author, Robert Goodwin, I think he lives in Madrid, and he studies the Spanish Empire. But if you're not American, or you're not from, the United States or Mexico or any of the other countries mentioned, you're not going to know the exact geography of what's going on. So much of it was like, they went from Mexico City to Baja, from Baja to, I can't even give it, to Texas. And it's just like, without context, that means nothing, So I just felt like providing more information on just the scope of it would have helped a lot more. So yeah, I gave that 3 stars. I thought it was interesting. I would like to learn more about it, but I just felt like this book was not it for me. The next book that I read was Finding Dorothy by Elizabeth Letts. This is a historical fiction book. This follows Maud Baum, who was the wife of L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, her life with Frank and how he was inspired to write The Wizard of Oz. It is also the story of her influence on the creation of The Wizard of Oz movie. I gave this book 4 stars. I really, really liked it. I loved Maud as a main character. I found it so interesting that she is the daughter of a suffragette and that she was one of the first women to go to Cornell. And she did end up dropping out to marry Frank Baum and to join his theater company and travel. But I just thought that was so interesting how there's like a historical basis to her life. I loved Maud and Frank's relationship. I thought it was really well done. And I think that it really portrayed marriage very well, especially marriage that starts off without like security. When me and my husband got married, I moved to the UK and things were a bit shaky as I like looked for a job and we were trying to get on our feet, and I very much related to their relationship as she joined his theater company and then that went bust, and then they moved to the Dakotas and then they moved to Chicago, all the while just trying to find their feet and get stable. I loved as we go through their lives, how you find these little nuggets of information that you know just end up making it into the Wizard of Oz, like how their niece's name was Magdalena, but she had a doll and then an imaginary friend named Dorothy, and how she always wore a blue checkered dress. It's just, there's so many little almost like fun facts that are woven in, and I really liked that. So it is a dual narrative between the past and the present, or not the past and the present, but between their life together in the late 1800s and then the creation of the movie in the 1930s. So Judy Garland does kind of play a part in this book, but it isn't a large part, and I didn't really like those parts as much too. It just felt kind of like it was thrown in there to kind of tie the Wizard of Oz thing all together. I did like how adamant Maud was to get Frank's vision into the movie, but I did just feel like almost like a little bit of star factor going in with bringing Judy Garland in as a character. It's not really known how much of an effect Maud had on the movie or how close she was to Judy Garland. So those parts didn't feel as strong to me. But overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I love The Wizard of Oz, and it was just great. It was really well done. I really liked it. So the next book I read was Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I read this with my mom and my sister. We did kind of like a buddy read, and we read it over the summer. So I started this in June and finished it at the end of August. I have such complicated feelings about this book. I gave it 5 stars because as a story, it is really, really good, and the writing is good too. But there are things that make me extremely uncomfortable. There are things that just angered me. The racism is blatant in here. Sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is. And it's shocking. It's actually shocking. And sometimes I just had to put it down because it's so in your face. But then there were other parts that I honestly knew nothing about. Like I grew up in California, so I have more of like a northern view of the Civil War. But like I had no idea that the South was just absolutely decimated after the Civil War. I had no idea that people were starving, stuff like that. Just the way Margaret Mitchell wrote about it was just so tragic. That's what this book is. It's tragic. I don't understand why it's built on the back. It says the greatest love story of our time. There is not a love story in this. It was just tragedy from start to finish. I really loved reading it, but I almost feel bad for how much I liked it. It's such an important book to read because of what it represents and how far we've come from that. This is like the epitome of the lost cause narrative in mythology. And frankly, it's bullshit. It is. Like, the way the characters act in here and the narratives that are being pushed, it's bullshit. But it's well done. It's well done bullshit. Scarlett O'Hara is interesting in that I loved and hated her at the same time. I thought she was so snarky and quick, and it's almost like she could do anything. but at the same time she was horrible and she treated people horribly, and I didn't like that. Brett Butler, same thing. Just really great people to read about, but not really people I want to know or anything like that. The ending really shook me. Like, I remember texting my mom, I just finished Gone with the Wind and I'm angry. It's just, I couldn't believe it, honestly. I kind of knew nothing going into this, so it was all a bit of a surprise for me. But overall, I really liked it. Margaret Mitchell is so great at writing atmosphere and setting, and I loved the scenes where she describes the land. She describes the city, like Atlanta when it was first being built, like the way that she described that was amazing. And some of the scenes, she just really sets the tone, really draws you in. And some of the moments, like when Scarlett and Melanie are escaping Atlanta, like I literally had my heart in my throat. It was just so well written, and the emotions were conveyed so well. I do think it's a great book. I think people should read it, but I think just keep in mind that there's a reason why this book was written. I also was reading about the movie, and I mean, just to like add on to the context of the book, they invited Confederate war veterans to see the movie. So these are people that fought in the Civil War for the South, and they were kind of given like a place of honor in the premiere of the movie. And if that just goes to show that the reason this book was written was to memorialize a way of life from that point of view. I can understand why people don't want to read it, but I liked it for what it is. So the last two books I have, I started and finished for the Rory Gilmore Readathon, which took place at the end of August, and it was a 24-hour readathon, and I tried to read 3 books, but I ended up reading 2. The first book that I finished was Henry IV, Part 1. I won't go into too much about it because I kind of talked about it in my vlog, but this is part of a larger series that Shakespeare has written about the history of the English Civil War. So there's a bunch of other plays that kind of play a part in this series. I really enjoyed this one. It was so angry. There were so many like angry monologues, so many great Shakespearean insults in it. The ending, so good. I just flew through the ending, the last act. I loved it. I do want to read more of these. I thought it was great. I love Shakespeare. I know a lot of people have issues with him, but I love him and I really enjoyed this one. And the second book I read for the Rory Gilmore Readathon was The Wizard of Oz. Now my copy has 3 books in it, The Wizard of Oz, The Emerald City of Oz, and Glinda of Oz, but I read The Wizard of Oz. It just was both a great book, but also disappointing at the same time. Disappointing in the fact that I loved the movie, and it was very different than the movie. And also that it was very much so a children's book, and I kept forgetting that, but parts of it, the parts that really annoyed me were the parts that make it a children's book. It was, I thought it was very simple, very repetitive, kind of one-dimensional. No one really has a personality, you know, and they all kind of just repeat themselves a lot. But then I kept having to remind myself, this is written for children, this is written for children. And with that in mind, I really enjoyed the last parts of it. Parts that were different than the movie, I actually really enjoyed. Like, one of my favorite scenes was when they go through the dainty China country, and it's just like a land of people all made out of China, and it's all these like China dolls walking around, and it's just, I love the imagery of that. And they're all afraid of being broken and stuff, and it was just, I felt like that was a really good part of the story that I can understand why it didn't make it into the movie. And I also loved the idea of the Emerald City being an illusion. So in the movie, we obviously know that the Wizard of Oz isn't a real wizard and he's a fraud, and it's the same in the book. But also in the book, the Emerald City is white, but the wizard makes everybody wear emerald glasses, and that's why everybody thinks that it's green. And I love that because it kind of just doubles down on the fact that these people have been tricked by this man. I also really liked the illustrations. I thought that they were beautiful, and I kind of just want one for my wall. It's just great. So I give this one 3.5 stars. Really enjoyed it. It is what it is. It's not the movie, but it's its own work that can stand on its own. And I am looking forward to reading the other ones. That's it. That's all the books I read in the month of August. I think I did okay. Let me know down below if you've read any of them, or if you want to read any of them, or if you have any comments or anything you want to talk about. Yeah, I would love to chat with you guys. I am looking forward to my reading in September, and I will be releasing a September TBR very soon. Thank you so much for watching.